Sometimes you stumble upon movies that are so bad that it is actually a bit laughable, but at the same time quite tiresome to get through them. That is also the case with this movie called Ship of the Damned, which you really want your time back after watching it. But as I now have seen this one, you do not have to do the same mistake as me, where I was lured in by the cover of these cannibalistic pirates. Because surely, more than most, it is the worst movie you are never going to watch. I will describe this as a much worse version of the movie Ghost Ship, which actually was a decent movie where they managed to build some tension. Here they do everything wrong in both the structure, the characters, the story, basically everything is off in this movie. To start with what the movie is about, we see this woman that suddenly answers her ex-boyfriend's phone after 4 years where she was the one leaving him out to dry on the wedding night, which usually would have been done by a man. And of course she is some sort of ultra masculine woman and her ex is well some sort of a very weak feminine man, which in most movies in the older days at least would have been the other way around. But of course he might get away with it because he is kinda nice and nerdy. This woman in the story also has a high knowledge of old ships, so then again maybe not. But if we get to the point, they randomly stumble upon this old pirate ship that suddenly is on the shore in an old town, which they then investigate after some guys had done it before them. Basically, that then this movie does not have a romance tag. It's extremely strange because all the time they try to fluff up some romantic tones between these characters that have not spoken in a long time with jazz music and randomized love kind of mood, even when they are stuck on the ship, leaving a lot of emotion between them, and they realize that they actually loved each other. But this is actually supposed to be a horror movie, not a long lost love kind of thing. That, of course, is problem number one. Problem number two is clearly the tension and the actual horror in the story. You were promised cannibalism, perhaps some tension, and it may have looked a little bit enticing in the beginning. When they walked behind the door and saw these desperate pirates eating up a man. But we rarely see too much of that in the story, where it would have been better to maybe start it by the tale of the cursed ship and what its origin was, instead of trying to tell it as the movie goes along, because then it gets kind of messy and hard to follow. Naturally, the problem is mostly the lack of horror and tension, where a lot of those scenes towards the end and in the fight lack intensity. Where you see, for example, a movie such as Strangle that this movie perhaps tried to copy, does a much better version of. One other reason why this one is the worst movie you are never going to watch is because how badly it is filmed. Naturally, they perhaps didn't have too much of a budget, and of course that shows very much. But even a movie such as Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, the first movie, which didn't have a large budget either, actually made some decent horror scenes. But that movie just shows that it really ain't impossible to do it. If we should say something about the acting, I never thought we would get a horror movie that could get even worse than X and Pearl, but of course deep down the rabbit hole of bad horror movies as this one is, we of course could find it. It has only Ben Manning that plays what seems to be the captain on the ship, Jacob, that actually acts with a little bit of conviction. The other guys, the main characters, the rest of the crew, and the therapist really look and act lackluster, making the bold claim that they actually did not enjoy being in the movie. Of course, it is a highly forgettable one, and if you bypass my advice and actually watch this movie, well, then do not say I didn't warn you, because this is really the worst movie I've seen this year. Because, yes, horror movies, of course, you have to work with what you get. But it is possible to create more tension, to have better characters, to make the horror scenes a bit longer, to really actual horror elements like the cannibalistic pirates a little bit more into the story. I mean, they are just like statues in the movie. It is also possible to use music more efficiently and not make it all out about romance. Because here in this movie, which I didn't mention, is that they use music at the wrong moments so many times. And the music is not either used to make it more intense. So well then again, one more time, I would like to say that this is really the worst movie you are never going to watch. And if you do decide to give it a shot, then good luck and perhaps bring a 6-pack. As a rating, I will hand this a 2 out of 10. And this is some of the worst shit I've ever seen.